Las Vegas, a name that conjures images of dazzling lights, vibrant casinos, and a city alive at every hour of the day. A place where fortunes are gambled, dreams are pursued, and memories are etched into the neon-lit nights. Yet beyond the glitz and glamour, this city holds another story. One far removed from the laughter of its crowded theaters or the cheers from its poker tables. For every spotlight that shines, there are shadows. And for two Vietnamese tourists who arrived here on a dream vacation in the summer of 2018, those shadows would claim everything. Their names were Sang Boy Nghia and Khuong Nguyen, visitors to a foreign land, seeking joy and adventure in one of the most celebrated cities in the world. Their group checked into the Circus Circus Hotel, a towering complex known for its family-friendly charm and 24-hour energy. It was meant to be a stop along a remarkable journey across the United States, a chapter filled with excitement and wonder. But just hours after they entered their 21st floor hotel room, the unthinkable happened. A morning that was supposed to begin with laughter and exploration started instead with unanswered questions. Sang and Khuong were missing. When the door to their room was finally opened, what awaited inside would haunt their group, shock a city, and send ripples of grief across the Pacific. Who would commit such an act in a place teeming with people, cameras, and constant motion? What happened in those early hours of June 1st, 2018, behind the locked door of their hotel room? And most chillingly, who walked away unnoticed while carrying their secrets? This is the story of two lives ended too soon, of a dream turned nightmare, and of the search for answers in a city that never sleeps. Join us on this channel while we uncover the tragedy that casts a long shadow over the City of Lights. Sang Boy Nghia was no stranger to hard work or responsibility. At just 38 years old, she was the director of a prominent tourism company in Ho Chi Minh City, a role that required dedication, precision, and care. Sang was known for her warmth and professionalism, someone who took pride in showing others the beauty of the world. This trip to the United States was more than just another tour for her. It was a dream fulfilled, an opportunity to guide her group through some of the most iconic destinations on Earth. By her side was Khuong Nguyen, a 30-year-old tour guide with a passion for exploration and a knack for connecting with people. Khuong had a charisma that made him beloved among his colleagues and clients alike. For him, this journey was a milestone, a chance to expand his horizons while helping others do the same. Together, they were more than just colleagues. They were a team with a shared mission, to create lasting memories for their group of travelers. The tour group arrived in Las Vegas on the afternoon of May 31st, 2018, after several exhilarating stops along the way. Their itinerary was packed with iconic landmarks, vibrant shows, and opportunities to immerse themselves in the energy of this dazzling city. For most, it was a once-in-a-lifetime adventure, a chance to step into the pages of a travel brochure and live the dream. That evening, the group checked into the Circus Circus Hotel, a sprawling complex on the northern end of the Las Vegas Strip. With its colorful exterior and family-friendly appeal, it seemed the perfect place to unwind before the next day's journey to the Grand Canyon. Sang and Khuong had a long history of ensuring every detail was flawless for their clients. They took care of everything, from organizing itineraries to handling the small concerns that arose along the way. For them, the joy of their travelers was the greatest reward. That night, as the group settled into their rooms, no one could have imagined the events that would unfold in just a few hours. For Sang and Khuong, it was supposed to be a restful evening before another day of adventure. But as the hours ticked by, something went terribly wrong. Two lives filled with promise and purpose were about to be irreversibly changed. The morning of June 1st, 2018, began like any other for the Vietnamese tour group staying at the Circus Circus Hotel. The plan was to set out early for the Grand Canyon National Park, a highlight of their journey across the United States. Excitement buzzed through the group as they gathered in the hotel lobby, eager to experience the breathtaking vistas that awaited them. But as the minutes ticked by, two familiar faces were conspicuously absent. Sangboy Nghia and Khuong Nguyen, always punctual and prepared, were nowhere to be seen. Calls to their phones went unanswered, and knocking on their hotel room door yielded no response. Concern began to ripple through the group. At first, their fellow travelers thought they might simply be running late or taking a much-needed rest after the long journey. But as the departure time approached, worry gave way to unease. Sang and Khuong were not the type to ignore their responsibilities, especially with the group depending on them. By mid-morning, hotel staff were alerted, and a welfare check was requested for their room on the 21st floor. A staff member arrived with a master key, hesitating briefly before unlocking the door. As the heavy door swung open, the bright light from the hallway spilled into the room, revealing a scene that no one could have anticipated. Inside, Sang and Khuong were found lifeless. The room bore unmistakable signs of violence. Furniture was overturned, and personal belongings were scattered across the floor. The victims' bodies bore multiple injuries, a grim testament to the brutality of their final moments. Hotel staff quickly called the authorities, and the floor was sealed off as detectives began their work. The discovery sent shockwaves through the group, who had moments earlier been planning their excursion. A dream vacation had turned into a nightmare that none of them could have foreseen. For Sang and Khuong, the promise of adventure and discovery ended within the walls of that room. For the police, the task of unraveling what had happened and who was responsible had only just begun. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department arrived at the Circus Circus Hotel shortly after the discovery of the bodies. The 21st floor was cordoned off, and a team of detectives and forensic experts began their meticulous work. This was no ordinary case. In a hotel filled with hundreds of guests and an intricate web of hallways and security systems, what had occurred in Sang and Khuong's room posed a daunting challenge. Initial theories swirled as investigators pieced together the fragments of the night before. Was this a dispute that had spiraled out of control? Both victims bore significant injuries, but the nature of those injuries suggested something far more deliberate. A second theory emerged, a robbery turned deadly. Several valuable items, including phones, jewelry, watches, and even cash, were missing from the room. The absence of these items seemed to support the possibility that the assailant's primary motive was theft. As detectives examined the hotel room, they uncovered a detail that seemed small but would prove critical: the door latch. It wasn't functioning properly. This meant the door could be pushed open from the outside without much effort, rendering the room vulnerable to anyone passing by. While the hotel's security protocol required staff to check room latches each night, no report had been made about this particular defect, a glaring oversight that would haunt the investigation. Witness accounts began to shed light on the events leading up to the tragedy. Several guests on the 21st floor reported hearing raised voices coming from the victim's room around 2 a.m. Some described the noise as an argument, loud and unsettling, but no one intervened. Whether out of respect for privacy or fear of involvement, the sounds eventually subsided, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. Detectives worked tirelessly to track the timeline of events, but in a city like Las Vegas, where people come and go at all hours, finding witnesses or leads proved difficult. The security footage from the hotel's cameras became the next vital tool in their search for answers. The early hours of the investigation painted a grim picture: a vulnerable hotel room, missing valuables, and signs of a struggle. The question that loomed largest, however, was the same one troubling everyone involved: who had been inside that room at 2 a.m. and why? The answers, as investigators would soon discover, were hiding in plain sight. As investigators pored over the case files, the first significant lead came from the hotel's security cameras. Circus Circus, like many establishments on the Las Vegas Strip, relied heavily on an intricate network of surveillance systems, capturing nearly every hallway, elevator, and exit. The footage provided a silent witness to the night's events. Around 4 a.m. on June 1, 2018, a man was spotted entering the elevator from the 21st floor, the same floor where Sang Boy Nghia and Khuong Ba Lung Nguyen were staying. His appearance was unremarkable at first glance, but a closer inspection raised immediate red flags. He was young, perhaps in his late 20s or early 30s, wearing a gray-blue t-shirt and black Adidas sneakers. Draped over one shoulder was a backpack that bore an uncanny resemblance to the one owned by the male victim, Khuong. What stood out most was a tattoo partially visible beneath the collar of his shirt. It appeared to be tribal in design, a distinguishing mark that would later prove critical to the investigation. The footage showed the man descending to the hotel lobby. His movements were deliberate yet calm, the kind of composure that betrayed no sign of guilt or haste. He paused briefly near the elevator bank, pulling out a phone to send a text message. He even appeared to make a casual phone call, holding the device to his ear as he strolled out of the building. If someone had passed him in that moment, they might have thought he was just another guest heading out for an early morning stroll. But the cameras didn't stop there. The man reappeared around 4:45 a.m., this time in the company of a woman. She seemed equally at ease, carrying a suitcase as they moved together through the hotel. Investigators noted how the man had added more luggage to his load, a backpack, a duffel bag, and another smaller bag, all of which matched descriptions of the victim's belongings. The pair left the hotel without raising any alarms, stepping into a waiting taxi. The vehicle disappeared into the early morning traffic of Las Vegas, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Detectives knew they had to act quickly. They analyzed the footage frame by frame, noting every detail about the man's appearance. His tattoo became a crucial clue. It was distinct, with intricate tribal lines that snaked under the collar of his shirt. This detail led investigators to review records of prior offenders with similar markings. The search yielded a potential match, Julius Trotter. His name was well known to local authorities and the FBI. At 31 years old, Trotter had an extensive criminal history. He had been arrested multiple times for theft, assault, and weapons charges. In 2017, he had been sentenced to 4 years in prison, but was granted probation after serving only a fraction of his term. Despite his release, his name continued to surface in connection with various petty crimes and violent offenses. One case in particular stood out, a robbery at the Four Queens Casino in downtown Las Vegas, just weeks before the murders at Circus Circus. In that incident, an 81-year-old woman had been attacked in her hotel room. The assailant, described as a man with a tribal tattoo, had stolen her jewelry and fled the scene. Although the woman survived, the crime bore eerie similarities to what had happened to Sang and Khuong. Detectives pieced together a pattern. Trotter had a history of targeting vulnerable individuals in hotels and casinos. His method was bold yet calculated, exploiting flaws in security systems and choosing victims who seemed unlikely to resist. The tattoo described by the Four Queens victim matched the one seen in the Circus Circus footage, solidifying Trotter as the prime suspect. But identifying Trotter was only half the battle. By the time investigators linked him to the murders, he was already gone. His ability to disappear had earned him a reputation among law enforcement. He was a drifter, often moving between cities without leaving much of a trail. He used aliases and avoided electronic transactions, making him difficult to track. Detectives issued an arrest warrant and released Trotter's photo to the public. The images from the Circus Circus surveillance system, combined with his prior mugshots, painted a clear picture of the man they were after. But in a city as transient as Las Vegas, finding him was like searching for a needle in a haystack. The clock was ticking. Every hour that passed gave Trotter more time to put distance between himself and the crime. Investigators ramped up their efforts, coordinating with federal agencies and other local law enforcement. They combed through taxi records, interviewed hotel staff, and monitored airports and bus stations. The evidence pointed squarely at Julius Trotter, but he had vanished into the very city where his crimes had taken place. For the families of Sang and Khuong, the wait for answers was agonizing. They had trusted that their loved ones were in good hands, exploring a country known for its opportunities and safety. Now, halfway around the world, they faced the harsh reality that justice was still out of reach. As the investigation intensified, one thing became clear. Julius Trotter wasn't just another petty thief. He was a predator, someone who had walked the halls of Circus Circus with purpose. His every move captured on camera painted a chilling portrait of a man who could blend into the crowd while carrying out acts of unimaginable violence. The search for Trotter had become a race against time. Investigators knew that if they didn't find him soon, he could strike again or disappear for good. The manhunt for Julius Trotter was now in full swing. With his name and face known to authorities, the suspect had become a fugitive, his every move shrouded in secrecy. Investigators in Las Vegas worked tirelessly to follow his trail, but Trotter had already proven his ability to evade capture. He had vanished into the noise and chaos of the city, slipping away like a shadow. Detectives began retracing his steps, using the last known footage of him leaving the Circus Circus Hotel. The taxi he and his female companion had entered became a focal point. Through meticulous tracking, investigators identified the vehicle and questioned the driver. From there, they pieced together Trotter's route. He had made his way out of Las Vegas, heading towards Southern California. As the days passed, the urgency to locate him intensified. Trotter was no ordinary suspect. His history of violent crimes and his connection to other robberies suggested he was a man capable of striking again. Law enforcement across state lines was mobilized. The FBI joined the effort, leveraging their resources to locate Trotter before he could disappear for good. The breakthrough came on June 7, 2018, nearly a week after the murders. A tip led investigators to a quiet residential neighborhood on Derby Avenue in Chino, California. The house in question was unassuming, nestled among others in the suburban sprawl, but the information was credible. Trotter had been seen entering the property days earlier, and law enforcement believed he was using it as a temporary hideout. Surveillance was established around the house, and the area was carefully monitored. The goal was clear: capture Trotter without tipping him off. But the calm observation didn't last long. On the morning of June 7th, a vehicle matching the description of one connected to Trotter was spotted leaving the property. Inside were two occupants, a woman behind the wheel and a man in the passenger seat. Detectives recognized the man immediately: Julius Trotter. As the car pulled onto the main road, officers moved in. Patrol vehicles closed in from all sides, sirens piercing the air. But instead of stopping, the driver hit the gas. The car surged forward, weaving through traffic as the chase began. What followed was a high-speed pursuit that tore through the streets of Chino. Trotter and his companion were desperate to escape, their car careening through intersections and narrowly avoiding collisions. Officers maintained a calculated pursuit, keeping a safe distance while radioing updates on the suspect's direction. The chase led to the outskirts of the city, where the suspect vehicle veered off the main road and into a residential area. The tight streets and sharp turns slowed their escape, but the driver continued, pushing the car to its limits. Eventually, the vehicle came to a screeching halt near a motel in Chino Hills. Trotter didn't wait for the officers to reach him. He bolted from the car, sprinting toward the motel parking lot in a last-ditch effort to disappear. Officers gave chase on foot, their commands echoing in the morning air. Within minutes, the pursuit ended. Trotter was tackled to the ground and restrained. His attempt to flee had come to an abrupt and decisive end. The woman driving the car, later identified as Trotter's girlfriend, was also taken into custody. Investigators believed she had been aiding him throughout his flight, providing transportation and shelter as he moved between locations. Back at the Derby Avenue house, a search warrant was executed. Inside, detectives uncovered critical evidence linking Trotter to the murders at Circus Circus. Among the items recovered were wallets, phones, and other valuables belonging to the victims, Sang Boy Nghia and Khuong Ba Lung Nguyen. A firearm was also discovered, believed to be the weapon used in the attack. Trotter was transported back to Nevada to face charges. For law enforcement, the chase was over, but the road to justice had only just begun. The arrest of Julius Trotter marked the culmination of a relentless search, one that had spanned multiple cities and pushed investigators to their limits. For the families of Sang and Khuong, the news of Trotter's capture brought a measure of relief, but it was tempered by the reality that no arrest could undo the loss they had suffered. The hunt for their loved one's killer had ended, but the pursuit of justice was far from over. Julius Trotter's arrest marked a pivotal moment in the investigation, but for law enforcement, it was just the beginning of the next chapter, building an unshakable case against him. The critical piece of evidence, however, was a firearm. Forensic testing would later confirm that it matched the weapon used in the brutal attack at Circus Circus. Security camera footage further strengthened the case. Images from the hotel clearly showed Trotter carrying a backpack resembling Khuong's as he exited the building. The footage captured his calm demeanor, which stood in stark contrast to the violence he had left behind. Combined with his history of violent crimes and his connection to a similar robbery at the Four Queens Casino, the prosecution was confident they had built a case strong enough to bring him to justice. Trotter was extradited to Nevada and formally charged with 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of robbery, and 1 count of burglary. The trial, which began in late 2018, quickly became a high-profile case, drawing widespread attention both in the United States and abroad. For the families of the victims, it was a painful reminder of the loss they had endured. For the Vietnamese community, it was a tragedy that underscored the vulnerability of their loved ones traveling far from home. The prosecution painted Trotter as a predator who had targeted Sang and Khuong with calculated intent. They presented the evidence meticulously, piece by piece, creating a timeline of the events leading up to the murders. Witnesses testified about the victims' last known interactions, the loud argument heard at 2 a.m., and the state of the crime scene. Forensic experts detailed how the injuries sustained by the victims were consistent with the recovered weapon, and financial records showed that the stolen credit cards had been used at casinos in the days following the murders. Trotter's defense team, however, sought to cast doubt on the prosecution's narrative. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that Trotter's prior criminal record had unfairly influenced the investigation. His attorneys claimed that the stolen items found at his residence had been planted or acquired through other means, and they suggested that the hotel's security flaws, particularly the defective door latch, opened the possibility of another perpetrator. As the trial progressed, the weight of the evidence became increasingly difficult for the defense to counter. Testimony from Trotter's girlfriend, who had been arrested alongside him, proved especially damaging. She admitted under questioning that she had seen Trotter carrying items later identified as the victim's belongings and acknowledged that she had helped him leave Las Vegas after the murders. While she denied direct involvement in the killings, her statements corroborated key elements of the prosecution's case. For the families of Sang and Khuong, attending the trial was a harrowing experience. The courtroom became a place where they were forced to relive the details of their loved one's final moments, and the sight of Trotter, sitting impassively as evidence was presented, only deepened their pain. Across the Pacific, the Vietnamese community followed the proceedings closely, united in grief and support for the victims' families. In October 2018, after weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury returned its verdict. Julius Trotter was found guilty on all charges. The decision brought a measure of closure to a case that had haunted 2 families and shaken the trust of a community. For his crimes, Trotter was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial's conclusion was bittersweet. While justice had been served, it could never bring back Sang and Khuong. Their families, still reeling from the loss, carried their grief back to Vietnam, where their absence would be felt in the quiet spaces of daily life. For Las Vegas, the case was a stark reminder of the city's dual nature. Beneath the glittering lights and promises of fortune, it remained a place where danger could lurk behind any door. And for the millions who visit each year, the tragedy of Sang and Khuong stands as a haunting reminder that even the brightest dreams can be shattered in an instant. Las Vegas is a city of paradoxes, a place that promises excitement, wealth, and indulgence, but also harbors a darker, less spoken of reality. For Sang Boy Nghia and Khuong Ba Lung Nguyen, it was meant to be a brief stop on an extraordinary journey. Instead, their time in the City of Lights ended in unimaginable tragedy, leaving a profound mark on both the city and those who knew them. The murders at the Circus Circus Hotel forced Las Vegas to confront a difficult truth. For all its glamour and allure, the city's sprawling hotel complexes and bustling casinos are not immune to danger. The investigation revealed critical flaws in hotel security, most notably the defective door latch that allowed unrestricted access to Sang and Khuong's room. It was a stark reminder that even in places designed for leisure and entertainment, safety cannot be taken for granted. In the aftermath, hotels across the Strip faced heightened scrutiny. Questions were raised about the effectiveness of security protocols and whether enough was being done to protect guests. Circus Circus, in particular, came under fire for failing to identify the door latch issue before tragedy struck. The case highlighted how a single oversight could lead to devastating consequences, prompting many establishments to reassess their practices. But beyond the operational shortcomings, the human cost of this crime resonated far beyond Las Vegas. Sang and Khuong's deaths left a void that could never be filled. They were more than just tourists. They were beloved members of their community, dedicated professionals who had spent their lives bringing joy to others. Sang's leadership and Khuong's enthusiasm had touched countless lives, and their loss was deeply felt by their families, colleagues, and friends. For their families, the pain was compounded by distance. Thousands of miles away from the city where the tragedy occurred, they struggled to come to terms with their loss. The journey to Las Vegas to retrieve their loved ones' remains was one of the most heartbreaking parts of this story. Yet, through their grief, they showed remarkable strength, advocating for justice and ensuring that Sang and Khuong's story would not be forgotten. For Sang and Khuong, their lives may have ended far too soon, but their memory endures, carried forward by those who refuse to let their story fade. And for all who hear this story, the message is clear. Even in the most vibrant places, life's fragility demands our attention, and justice, no matter how delayed, remains our greatest hope. The story of Sang Boy Nghia and Khuong Ba Lung Nguyen is one that lingers, a chilling reminder that even in the most dazzling of places, danger can still find its way. Las Vegas, with its glittering lights and boundless energy, is a city that invites dreams. But for these two travelers, it became the setting of a nightmare that no one could have foreseen. Their tragic fate underscores a sobering reality. Safety can never be assumed, not even in places designed to make us feel secure. In the neon glow of Las Vegas, their story remains, a haunting echo of how quickly everything can change. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and hold those you love a little closer. Because even in the brightest of cities, shadows can fall. If you found this story compelling, please remember to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth stories like this one. Your support helps us continue to bring these important narratives to light. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.